All right, guys, what is up, everyone? Please let me know if you can hear me properly. Sound seems to be okay on my end, which means we can dive into some technical analysis, some statistical analysis for Bitcoin and Ethereum. All right, without further ado, let's dive into things. So far, things are playing out nicely. The question, obviously, on everyone's mind is: was this the bottom? What's up, Duckout Trader? Good to see you, man. The question on everyone's mind is: was this the bottom? That's something I will attempt to answer. Because last stream we were looking for a bottom, right? I don't remember exactly when the last stream was. It was probably just before this bottom. Yeah, it was just before this bottom where I said, as you probably know, that I'm looking for a bottom in between these two fib retracements, right? So somewhere within here. Back then, I mean, we were already at the 382. So I said somewhere in this area, I'm looking for a high time frame bottom followed by a move back up, right? So now we are forming that bottom, and the question on our minds is: was that actually the bottom? Yes or no? So let's dive into that, right? First things first, my bias has not changed. I know, like, in terms of sentiment, it will be a great bottom because sentiment was absolutely down to gutter here. Sentiment was down to gutter once again here. Everyone was losing their minds. Crypto Twitter was losing their minds. I had people mad. I had people yelling. Sentiment was bad, right? It was really bad. So that's what you want. I just posted that. Like, it's not that every time sentiment is really bad that you have to form a bottom. You can keep dumping. But every time you form a significant bottom, sentiment will be bad. So far, those things are lining up. We have a nice reaction so far. We have this nice little retrace here. But this price action, as we'll get into, I personally would just ignore it almost. But so far, things are not looking bad. However, there's a couple of things we need to take into account. And just like bears were celebrating too early here, if right here you were celebrating a breakout towards all-time highs, I also think you were too early, right? You must not lose yourself in fear here, which definitely a lot of people did. And we must equally not lose ourselves in euphoria here, because we're not there yet, right? We're definitely not there yet. So let's take a look at what we can see from statistics, from my analysis, and from all the other things, because my bias hasn't changed yet, right? I still am looking for a bottom here. So first things first, does that mean this bottom is safe? I mean, it could be, but I'm not saying it actually has to hold, right? If something like this happens, I mean, that would still not invalidate this scenario. For me, the invalidation of a scenario here, of the bottom here, would simply be losing this level. I just think this would be too deep of a retrace for a proper healthy retracement. And then we'll have to reassess and look at where things are. But you really, 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 as I discussed last week, want to hold that level. So now going into the lower time frames, right? Like I said, I think people here, like what you're seeing now, bears celebrating, bulls celebrating, bears celebrating, bulls celebrating, all too early. And if you see that kind of pattern, then what is often happening is that a range is forming. And a range forming is something I have been waiting for, right? So that's already the hint. The thing I think is still most likely here. I've posted that yesterday on Twitter. I've posted it in Discord, and let's just assess a little bit. So we have this high time frame range right there. The high time frame range is this one, right? The range we've been looking at. Let me clean that up a little bit. Just looking at a high, midpoint, and low. So right now we are at range low. At the moment, this is resistance, right? At the moment, this is resistance. So there's no need to get, just like there's no need to get overly bearish here, there's obviously no need to get overly bullish here, because we are at resistance. And until we reclaim it, we'll have to assume that it is resistance. So until something like this happens, it makes sense to be resistance for now, because I do believe we'll reclaim it. I believe this will turn out to be a deviation. And I want to make something clear, right? People say, like, oh, yeah, but you seem 100% sure. Like, you seem to give it 0% chance that the top is in. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance. Of course, there's not a 0% chance the top is in. But, in my opinion, the probabilities are far higher that the top is not in than that the top is in. So that's obviously what I'm playing. So to get back to this, right now this is resistance. It doesn't mean we cannot reclaim it, because I do believe we will. But at the moment, we have to treat it as resistance, right? So we're right now here, and as I mentioned yesterday in my, let me see if I can actually find that. Let's see how that's aging, because that's actually important. You want to look at the volume profile to see if a range is maturing. Right here. So now I said yesterday, now looking for that range to form here locally, right? So that's this pull basically from the start. So let's take a look at that. That's basically here. Yeah, and that's what you want to see. So that's what I was looking at. So right now here, this was like more or less a gap, and you're slowly starting to fill this gap, right? As you know, the range requires a normal distribution in volume. So if you start filling in these gaps, then more and more a range becomes more and more likely. So now we have this gap as well. So if this range forms, then it's very likely to assume that price is going to spend some more time at 80K to also fill this gap. So that's something we must keep in mind. Of course, there is obviously a scenario where this would be a break of structure and prices keeps going on like that, and it is my belief that we'll go higher. But you got to be cautious for these things. You shouldn't let yourself get dragged back in euphoria here, because until we reclaim this level, I would treat it as resistance, and I would look for this range to potentially form. If we reclaim it, right like this, amazing, great. If we reclaim it, then you're looking at this level next, right back to range highs. Very, very, very high probability if we reclaim it. But I still think it's very much a logical scenario if we would do something like this and then reclaim it, right? As often happens this cycle, things take longer than people want, right? How much range-bound action have we had in this cycle? An enormous amount of range-bound action, right? So let's just take this principle. If you would have assumed at any given point in time in the last 2 years or so that Bitcoin was going to range, how often would you have been right versus how often you would have been wrong? Most often, you would have been right. So if you're just following the probabilities, then here it makes sense to also assume, okay, we're probably going to range for a bit locally before we can reclaim it, reclaim the higher time frame range back up to the high, right? So then we have the range high very nicely coinciding with that high time frame range low, and then we'll just keep ranging below here until the reclaim. So this is something I am looking at right now. Not getting too bullish, not getting too bearish. Right now, I think the proper stance is neutral, and that also makes sense. And by the way, that's locally, right? High time frame, I'm biased for higher. But the thing is that also, after you had such a big drop, most often price forms a range, right? Most often price ranges at least for a bit until price goes back to or continues or reverses. So my working theory right now is that we need to form a range. If that range indeed forms, then in my opinion, the levels are already becoming quite clear. This is the range low. And this looks like a nice low, right? This actually looks like a nice low. So, this 1, 2, 3, I mean, very nice. So this could definitely do something like this. I'm not saying we absolutely have to range, but my working theory will be that we have to range. And in this case, this is the range low, this is the range high. We've just tapped the range high. So if we keep rejecting from here, then what is next? Range low. And that's where we would look for longs again. Regardless, this is definitely not the place where one would look for any longs, right? So that's my working theory on Bitcoin right now. So to sum it up very quickly, high time frame, we are ranging, right? Here, we're working, we have to probably form a bottom of the even higher time frame market structure right here. So this is this market structure on the weekly. This one. Right, this has been my working theory. This is the whole reason why I was looking for a bottom here, this market structure. Read my post about it. I'm not gonna discuss it too much because too many people will see information twice that they've already seen. But so we're looking for retracement on that higher time frame bottom. or that higher time frame uptrend. I mean, and right now, what it seems like is that that bottom might form itself through a local range, and the invalidation of the idea of a range is obviously reclaiming this high where we're now rejecting from, right? The current high time frame range low. So if this is reclaimed, then the idea of a range is invalid. But if that range forms, expect this volume area to form like this, where this still needs to get filled. So that means spending some more time at 80K. I know people don't want to hear it, but if there is a range, then you can be quite confident that will happen. So let's look at some further things. Let's look at, first of all, pivot zones. I want to look at pivot zones actually. Or what am I gonna look at next? Yeah, let me look at pivot zones first. So first, the weekly pivot zones. As you know, when price is ranging and price leaves the pivot zone, so the P2 zone, this happens only 20% of the time, right? Only 20% of weeks will leave the pivot zone to the downside because there's simply an 80% chance to put in P2 within here. Now, that happened now twice, and when it happens, especially when price is ranging, what it is now, this is also why I wrote about it yesterday in the Discord, that I believe price is ranging and you can look for mean reversion plays. So we had this price leave the pivot zone, mean revert, right? Now we have price leave the pivot zone, mean revert. And yesterday I came out and I said I would be looking for mean reversion here because Bitcoin is ranging, right? First of all, it's not impulsing. If this is like strongly impulsing, you don't want to do this, right? That's like trying to long bull this in a strong downtrend. But right now, price is clearly ranging. So what we can see then is that we have a mean reversion. How far does it have to go? Well, that depends. But if you've read my post, then very often this leads to a significant mean reversion. Let me see if I can find that post where I posted it ahead of time. There you go. So during last year's range, price left the P2 zone 3 times to the bottom. All 3 were good buy areas, at least for a significant reversal, right? So this was last year's range, left to the bottom here. Okay, mean reversion. I mean, this is quite a mean reversion, right? This is probably 15%. Here, massive mean reversion, and here, massive mean reversion, which was also the bottom before the next leg up. So, you know, you could, and now we did it twice in a row. But regardless, oftentimes these lead into significant mean reversions. Actually seeing something interesting here. Yeah, but also here, see, you form this local range before moving back up. See what I mean? Massive dump, local range. It's not the same context, but it is the same idea where you form the local range. So this is another piece of confluence that we're getting overbought and that a mean reversion is in play and that higher prices are, you know, might come. Does it have to happen or will possibly come, if I can say so? Does it has to happen now? No, you could, you know, do something like this, start making your way up or something like this, right? I just wouldn't be too hurried and too hasty in wanting higher prices. So that's pivot zone. So looking good for a nice mean reversion here, right? This is actually, if you've been following my stream, one of the things I've been looking at since the start of, or a long time in this range, where I said I would love to leave this range to the downside, leave a P2 zone, because this is the first time it's happening in this range. In this entire range, we didn't leave the P2 zone and then start looking for bottoms, right? So this is obviously, yes, still the place I am looking for bottoms. All right. Then I want to actually look at the daily pivot zones, which I still have to get on my chart. So let me get the daily on. Let me get like 10 of those. Open the dashboard. Probably already open this dashboard as well. 20. Don't want hourly. I'll take the daily and the session. Because right now, if the thesis of a range locally is correct, then what we want to be looking at is mean reversion plays. But my higher time frame bias is up, right? I do believe we're going to reclaim this range eventually, and we're going to go to the highs, and we'll put in our next impulse this is, like I said, is just a retrace and higher, right? I'm more confident in that than saying that we have to range here, but it is more likely, in my opinion, that we have to form a little range there. All right, let us wait for this one to finish loading. Let's see what I've selected. There she is. Copy the zones in there. All right, let's see what we got. All right, so this is the weekend, so I'm excluding that one from my analysis because I don't trade weekends. But here you can see it's starting to work again. So here, small mean reversal, right? Small mean reversal, big mean reversal, right? And then, I mean, this was obviously outside the pivot zone, but this was a crazy news event. And then here, I mean, this is why I say this was an anomaly, right? Because this is a news pump on a Sunday, so I would not pay attention to it because the news was not really news, right? It was an announcement of an announcement. So honestly, that's why I posted that when price was back here, I said, okay, now price is pretty much back where it should have been. But basically, once price starts ranging, if price reaches the edge of these pivot zones, I've noticed that oftentimes it follows into a mean reversal. So here you see it again, nice touch, mean reversal. Now we're almost at the end of that pivot zone, and we're seeing a rejection so far. So once again, what are we looking for with these pivot zones? Very simply put, we're looking for where the P1 and P2 get put in. There's an 80% chance for P1 to be put in here, the daily P1, and an 80% chance for the daily P2 to be put in here. That means there's only 20% chance that the daily P2, so in this case it would be the daily high, right? It's the daily low or the daily high. Whichever comes first is P1, whichever comes second is P2. So in this case, you're betting on 1, you're at resistance, right? 2, you're almost at the edge of this pivot zone, so you know that very few days make it this far. And therefore, I would be looking for a high to be put in here. Then the question is, okay, how good of a high is 12 p.m.? And for that, we can go into the dashboard. All right, let's look at a couple of things. First, let's look at some distance statistics. Right, so only 25% of days actually of bullish days make it higher than what price has currently done, right? So we moved 5.4% from daily low right here to daily high, and only 25% of them will move higher than this. So another piece of confluence that this is looking exhausted, right? And that it is resistance, and adds confluence to our thesis of needing or possibly ranging here, right? Possibly ranging. Only 1.9%, the daily low seems safe as well, though. Let me smash on this one. Only 1.9% of days would take out the daily low from here. So that's also not likely. So this one also seems safe because this would be 1.9% occurrence. Right? We can see that from here. It really doesn't happen a lot. So higher is becoming increasingly unlikely, but taking out the daily low is also very unlikely. So, this is not a weird place to put in a high, followed by, ending up somewhere within here for the rest of the day. But we can do more than that. Let's look at what the timing statistics are saying for Bitcoin. Let me actually just go to the summary page. All right, Bitcoin current P1 hour 0, so that's a good pivot. Current P2 hour 12. It's been 70 days since it's been P1, but it's been 11 days since it's been P2, which is not that weird of a time. Then let me actually get some more granular data. 12. Okay, no, so the 12 is definitely a very low probability time to put in a P2. So we know two things now. We know that it's very unlikely we're going to take this low out today, right? Because only 1.4% of days would move this far up, followed by a move back down. So that's probably safe, right? We call the P1 protected for the day at least. And then we also know that, our like a P2 being put in at hour 12 is very unlikely, right? 2.1%. Yes, it happened a lot of days ago, but only 2.1% of the time it happens. We can see that the more likely time would be in between 14, 15, 16. We see that better if we go here on one more granularity up. 3-hour candles, yeah, 11.5%. To be exact, there is a 22 plus 25 is 47, 32. All right, so there is a 80% chance, more or less, to put in a daily P2 later today. So the conclusion is, okay, this is probably not a good time to short, right? That's the conclusion, because it is statistically likely that at the very least we're going to take this out before any downside. And then if we were to take out this low, it's more likely to happen tomorrow rather than today, right? So that's the conclusion for the intraday on Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be taking any shorts here at the moment, even though, I also think I would rather, I think the higher probability play, because my high time frame bias is up, right? And for now, the range is more speculation than confirmed. If price goes lower, then in my opinion, that would be much more of a confirmed range. And then I would prefer to wait for price to go lower, look for longs here, than now to take shorts here. And then we have an extra piece of confluence now, is that this high is not a good high right now, because in terms of timing, it really doesn't happen much that we put in a high there, right? It really, really doesn't, or a daily P2. So for the day, it seems likely that we have to go up, take that, and then see what happens from there. So at the very least, we know that this is not the right time to short. Going further, we can look at sessions. So we're right now in the brighter data New York session. Let me get this back on. P1 at hour 12, P2 at hour 13. I mean, this is pretty much a nothing burger at the moment. There's nothing happening here yet that we can really derive anything from with P1 hour 12, P2 hour 13. We know that both of these are not unlikely to put in P1, but basically this whole area, the P1, you're looking for that to be put in during the first 3 hours of the session, right? Hour 12, hour 13, hour 14. In fact, in total, a New York session P1 will be put in this time period for 65, 80, 84% of the time. 84% of the time. Huge. What does that mean? That means that you have an 84% chance to put in the session P1 in this time zone. I mean, and this you can stack, right? Because then we can actually get, that's the wrong indicator. You can get the pivot zones back on, the session ones. There we go, sessions. Let me just get the one. So, you're looking for a session P1 to be put in within here, in this time zone, right? That's where you're going to have the session high or session low, but the first one, right? So here you're going to put in either the high followed by the move further down, or the low followed by the move further up. So what we also know is the place, right? We know that 80% of the time, see, we're now rejecting pretty much from the session P1. 80% of the time, we will put in a session P1 within here, and 80% of the time we put in session P2 either here or here, but that depends on whether we have a bullish session or a bearish session. So actually, this is nice confluence to put in a session high, right? I would definitely look more for, if you're looking for any intraday trades, I would be looking more for shorts here than for longs. But as mentioned, I prefer to wait for more downside. But, if something like this would happen before hour 15, that would be very nice. However, if this happens, let me get this back on. So hour 15, imagine this happens. Where's my brush? Imagine this happens and we go back up. Then at this point, you know this is probably not going to reverse anymore, because the P1 is most likely to be put in the first 3 hours, right? So between 12 and before 15 or 12, 13 or 14 UTC, so before 3 p.m. UTC. So if it gets there after that, you're more likely to get continued upside, right? So if in the New York Open we see this kind of price action, and then immediately dump back down, and then that's very good, and you're looking for a downside, and you're looking for targets here. But for now, we know that we're waiting for higher prices, because the New York high is not a very good high. It's not a very good P2, or a daily P2 at least. So, you're just looking for the first pivot to be put in those first 3 hours, and where it's put in will really depend on, or will really determine the most likely direction. So if this happens, and then this, expect higher. If instead this happens and then this, then it's still very nice for downside, and you're looking here. All right, so let's see if there's any questions. No, there is not. I see a lot of Twitter notifications without any. Let me quickly check the stream there to see if I can see them there. No. All right, Bobby Bitcoin. Now I see it. Thoughts on ETH. Okay, so I just found out that apparently the chats, I can only see them in Twitter user interface. All right, so yeah, ETH. I'm going to go to ETH. Tom Lee, COS USDT. Sorry, I won't have time to do COS, but I will do ETH. I will do ETH. So, okay, Bitcoin closed off. High time frame, we're looking for higher. Local time frame, looking for a range, and even lower session time frame, looking for at least this high to be taken out. And if that happens in the next 2 hours, it would be good for further downside. If it happens later, then expect, that would actually be bullish, and you could expect further downside, right? So you're looking for, is this going to be P1 or is this going to be P1? This is definitely not going to be, definitely not going to be P1, but very unlikely to be P1, right? And the daily low is probably safe. So that wraps up Bitcoin. Any questions, let me know. If not, I'm going to move on to Ethereum. All right, Ethereum. There we go. All right. First thoughts, not popular, but I think we need to go lower. I've laid this out in my post yesterday. So let's actually go back to that. Ethereum, where was my first post about it? All right, here. So first things first, I have good news and bad news for Ethereum. The bad news is that ETH has some horrible looking equal lows, which rarely get left unchecked. The good news is that following the same theory, we also left horrible looking equal highs, which also rarely get left unchecked. Given the current price action, the logical conclusion would be that taking out the lows first, followed by a move up towards the highs, is the most logical move. So this was posted here, or here, sorry. Shouldn't give myself too much credit. And the equal lows back then was this. Something like this, right? I said, okay, we need to take these out. And the red box is what I was looking for, between 1600 and 1900. I still think there's a good chance that we're going to go there. This is, at the same time, by the way, this is not the time to get overly bearish, right? This is the time where you want to start looking for positions, because as mentioned already, the good news is that following the same theory, we also left horrible looking equal highs, which also rarely get left unchecked. So I do believe we still need to go towards those highs, but I also believe it's not very much time yet. And I said that after we wicked down into those equal lows, I said, but in doing so, we made new fresh equal lows. To me, this looks like the classic fake SFP that tricks everyone into thinking, all right, this was it. I would like to see a more substantial move to the downside, a proper liquidity grab. Preferably, we're spending some time beneath the lows as well. And this is what I said. At the same time, we're at range lows. So obviously, this is not the time and place to become very bearish, but rather start looking for positions. So there's a couple of things that hang on this though. So we had these equal lows, then we wicked down, and we pretty much created this new equal lows that I was talking about right here, right? These equal lows, and this is equally just not a nice low at all. It is, for me, the classic price classic price action where people say, "Oh yeah, that's an SFP," and everyone is long now and is going, for the highs. In my opinion, more often than not, this is a trap. Can it happen? Yes, of course. It could even bounce, have a good relief bounce, and then still come down, right? I'm not saying that it has to come down immediately, but the truth is that so far, I think the first important level to reclaim here is this one, and we're now hanging above it. But I think it's a very common trap. The reason why I don't like this as a liquidity grab is because this is a huge liquidity pool, right? There's a huge liquidity level, and more often than not, price needs to actually move very aggressively beyond it rather than just nipping it, right? So very often you just see some more force, you see some more time, and then price goes back up. This is the exact same reason that I gave why I said that Bitcoin should go below 90K, right? While we're in the range for Bitcoin, some streams ago, when we were here, I was saying, okay, we need to go. I was even saying it here, but then we went back up. So that's the same point, right? I was saying it here, and then it didn't happen immediately, but eventually it happened, right? So that's what I'm saying with ETH as well. We can go back up, but more often than not, I said here, I became louder and I said, okay, I do think we need to go sub 90K because of the very same reason why I'm now saying that Ethereum probably needs to go below that level, because you just need a liquidity grab like this to clear out all that liquidity. It doesn't happen with a quick SFP like this. Do some back testing, don't trust me, don't take my word for it. Very often you see these kind of SFPs, the reaction dumps back down, have a proper SFP, scare everyone out, everyone say like, well, that was it, and only then returning back up. I believe this also has to do with market makers needing time as well as price to fill their positions, right? This is also both price-based and time-based capitulation. So these are my first thoughts on Ethereum. Ethereum is clearly still very range-bound, and we're now at range low. So once again, not the place, like this is range low for me, 2200. Or is it 2169? Sorry, but it's not the place where we're starting to get bearish. Not the same where we're starting to doom post everything. But if Ethereum starts, or if Bitcoin starts ranging, so this is the thing, right? If Bitcoin shows tremendous strength and starts reclaiming this, and we start, making ready for the move higher. I think it becomes less likely for Ethereum to do it, because is it impossible to leave lows like this? No, but it just rarely happens from my experience. But if Bitcoin starts ranging locally, the scenario we just discussed, I would say this becomes a very likely scenario simply because Ethereum Bitcoin is so weak, right? Very, very weak. This is actually crazy. Crazy. I mean, I have to be honest. I did not expect this much weakness for this long. So, but it is what it is right now. Like I said, while the trend is your friend until the end. Last stream, someone asked me, what about alt season? I said, well, I'll just keep assuming it won't happen, because as long as the trend is like this, there's no reason to assume it will reverse, right? I do think it will reverse, but I also think we need quantitative easing first for that to happen, right? We need a risk-off environment. We don't have a risk-off environment at the moment, or risk-on environment, sorry. So as long as Bitcoin stays weak, as long as Bitcoin keeps ranging there at the range we're looking at, then yes, I do believe this is a likely scenario. However, I also believe that that will be a very, very, very good time to once again load up on spot. If you still have any fiat left, that is, because I don't have much fiat left. So I'll just be waiting that out, personally speaking. So right now, my thoughts on ETH is that we need to go lower. At the same time, we are at range lows. So this is where you are looking to get positions. This is not where you're looking to take big shorts. Hope that makes sense. Those are my thoughts on Ethereum. Let's quickly also dive into some statistics for Ethereum. Honestly, Ethereum, yeah, so Ethereum is already pretty far down the gutter. Only 20% of weeks see further displacement than what we've already have, which probably means it's pretty close to the P2 zone. Yep. So this is what I mean, right? If price is severely downtrending, which it is, right? So this is a clear, I mean, on the very high time frame, it's ranging, but right now we're in rotation towards the low. So this is a very clear rotation towards the range lows in a strong downtrend. Strong downtrend. As long as that is happening, I would be cautious with trying to take mean reversion straight at the edge of pivot zones, right? So because at this point it's just, yeah, okay, we're in a downtrend. It's the same thing. I've mentioned this as well. So this works very well looking for mean reversions from the edge of pivot zones if price is ranging, right? If price is ranging, this works very well because it's a mean reversion strategy. It's like I said, any strategy comes with, or most of the strategies, maybe not when you're scalping, but there needs to be the right environment for it. And categorically, that is usually either ranging environments or trending environments. So you have your trigger, which in this case, leave the pivot zone, but then you also have the context you need to be aware of, which is, are we ranging or are we trending? Very simple, right? Right now, we are clearly trending. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to this one. I would just, especially because of what I just described, I would assume it will keep going lower. And then maybe when we start forming a local range here, then leaving the P2 zone once again becomes interesting. All right. So that's my thoughts on Ethereum, guys. Unfortunately, it is what it is. I do expect lower. I'm saying that as an Ethereum holder. Cannot say as a proud Ethereum holder at the moment. However, the bright side is that I'm also, very confident that we will go towards these highs after it, because for the same reason that we're going to go to the highs, or most likely going to the highs for Bitcoin, just very, very, very rare to leave highs like this. So that's the good news that I discussed. I discussed that it's just very rare to put in a low like this with equal lows, because you usually just need the bigger liquidity grab. The same can be said for the highs, right? So that means that if we go here, then we're just loading up liquidity. And then if we reclaim this, I think it will go very fast. We will go here, we will take it out, and then we will probably break out of this range with, all-time highs next. But, the timeline, you're looking at months, I would say. This can take a while. Right? So, months / weeks to months. Let me put it like that. All right, so let's quickly check what Bitcoin is doing. So those are my high time frame thoughts on Ethereum. Don't want to make it anymore. There's actually one more thing we can do on Ethereum to see if this would happen this week already or later. So let's see. Ethereum now has a P1 on. Let us check. On Monday and a P2 on Tuesday. All right, yeah. So then we're probably going to go lower this week. Yeah, probably already going to go lower this week, guys. For the simple reason. Yep. Let me put it like this. Monday is the most likely time to put in a pivot, right? 62% of weeks put in a Monday P1, so a high or a low, depending on which one comes first. And here we have it. Monday and Tuesday is the low. We know at the same time that we look at the distance statistics. So we're looking at the problem. Okay, what is the probability of this happening this week? 1.7%, right? That's happened only twice. We can see in the last 6 years or so. So only 1.7% of weeks would perform such a move, which makes it quite rare, right? Very rare, to be honest. So that's a low probability. At the same time, only 20% of weeks go lower, right? This is the only bullish thing I can get out of it, right? That only 20% of weeks do go lower. But I always weigh these statistics based on how obvious they are, and with that I mean how much what their occurrences are. And if you look at the weekly P2 on Ethereum, only 4.8% of weeks put in P2 on Tuesday, and 150. It's been 155 weeks since Ethereum did that. Oh no, wait. This data cannot be. Is this data right? Let me check if this data is right. I think this page is bugged. Let me check this one. Bitcoin, Ethereum. All right, 14% of weeks, but it's still a very low. 14 weeks ago. Yeah, I need to fix that page. Actually, it's quite bugged, but it's still 14 weeks ago since it happened. Not too bad, actually. Not too bad. That does change things a little bit. It's good to notice I will fix this immediately. But still, it happens only 4.8% of the time. So purely at time statistics, looking at time statistics, you have a 93% chance or 92% chance of not having the P2 on Tuesday. Not having the P2 on Tuesday is a 92% chance. So that's very low, right? It's a low, or at least it's a high percent chance to take this out. The only bullish thing I can find on that is, once again, that only 25% of weeks go further down, right? So you have those as conflicting statistics. So usually I use those. I how do you say that? If they're talking against each other, I usually say, okay, then let me put it like this: if a P2 is ever going to be put on Tuesday, it's going to happen on a week like this, where only 25% of weeks make it this far, because it is simply already in the realm of the impossible, right? It's already in the realm of the improbable, not the impossible. We're already in the realm of the improbable. This already happens only 25% of weeks, or 20% of weeks even. So if ever we're going to look for a P2 on Tuesday, this would be the week for it, right? And this is also the reason why I personally would not short for it. I would not short for it if I see this. If I see P1 Monday, P2 Tuesday with, distance statistics saying 50% or higher, I'd be much more inclined to do it. However, if Bitcoin starts ranging, I can see it happen, right? So a lot depends on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin, starts reclaiming shit, then this is in play. If Bitcoin doesn't and Bitcoin starts ranging, then I expect lower prices this week. And the most likely area to put it in is, as always, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, even if you pick Thursday with it, it is 50, almost 50% plus 15%, 63% plus Thursday is 79, almost 80% chance to put in the P2 Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So just purely from those statistics, you would expect this one to be taken out, because this one seems safe. Only 1.4% of weeks would take it out, and only 3% or 5% of weeks would put in a P2 on this day. So conclusion, to tie everything together, I think for Bitcoin, the range here is most likely at the moment. If price does that, I would still expect, a bottom to form and eventually reclaim the range. That is my bias. And if that happens on Bitcoin, considering the extreme weakness on Ethereum, I would expect Ethereum to actually make fresh lows, while Bitcoin does not, right? While Bitcoin does not. If Bitcoin, however, shows strength and reclaims, then there is hope for Ethereum there that we will not take those lows. But just Even if I don't look at Bitcoin, if I just look at Ethereum, I would say the chances are much higher that we take these lows some more than not doing them. But at the same time, chances are equally as high to take out these highs right here, right? And once again, it doesn't have to happen now. We don't have to do this. We could even do, this. It's all possible, right? But for now, it does look like this week more downside is likely, which is a confluence with the plan on Bitcoin, which is local range. So right now, it's the time to be cautious, reserved, in my opinion. I think it's too early to call this for a massive bottom, but it could definitely be, right? So I'm still looking for this as a potential low area, as you know. And right now, yeah, I mean, it could be a low. If you look at the structure here, break the structure there, retest. So this is high, low, high, potential high, low, but then we would need to break this for the higher high, right? So we're not there yet. But it could happen because you can see the price is very much trending here, right? So if it just keeps trending, then it will happen. But most often, price goes from trend to range to trend to range to trend to range. And that's why my working theory here as well, that we're likely going to range here, fill in this gap. So in that case, 80K would be coming. Let's see what is happening now here. All right, so now this is actually not setting up that weird for I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I do think we still need to take out this high. So then now the New York session is filling this local fair value gap. So then you're looking at to be a high to be put in. And remember what I said, if we take out that high later than 3 p.m., that I would actually be more bullish than taking it before 4 p.m., right? This is anywhere taking a high here is pretty bullish. And you look for at least some further upside. So right now, not looking too bad for it, right? But if you get this, then look for the downside. So let's see what New York session it gives us. All right, guys. I think, let's see, 52 minutes, 47 minutes. Nice time. You know my high time frame thoughts, the lower time frame thoughts. I'll give you some statistics, what I'm looking at. I hope it all makes sense. Any questions, as always, let me know in the chat. Bitcoin and Ethereum, both high time frame still bullish. That's the main takeaway, I'm guessing. And yes, I'm still looking for a bottom in this area. Could this be the bottom? Yes. Does it have to be? No, right? Don't lose yourselves in too much bullishness and too much bearishness here. The first level to reclaim is obviously the range low right here, which is now resistance, and I do believe it will act as local resistance for the range. So it's very important to pay attention to that. But once this is reclaimed, then yeah, I don't see how we're not going to go towards these highs and take them out with some strength. If anything, this looks really good, right? If we reclaim this, then this looks so much better for a breakout. So much better. Like this didn't look that good for a breakout, but this would look amazing for a breakout, right? If we reach the highs next time, I would not short this. That's what I'm saying. I would not short this. So let's see how the range develops here, if at all, and play the range as it develops, unless this reclaims, and then we'll treat it accordingly. Because if this happens, obviously you're looking for longs to position yourself on retraces. But so far, if this range develops, this is where you're looking for longs. And I do expect, if the range develops, to spend some more time at 80K. All right, guys. Asa, I would love 91K to hold as a resistance, go for a new low, then go for a new all-time high. Yeah, I could see it happen, right? Like, I don't think this would be a weird scenario at all. It would still be in this area that I'm looking at. I just don't want to see it go here. But something like this is definitely possible, especially when you're considering that a range here is not unlikely. So, completely agree. I could see it happen. We definitely need to take it into account. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the Discord if you have any further questions, and otherwise, I won't see you next week because I'm on a ski holiday next week. Well, I'll still be working, but probably no streams to see if I can at least have maybe 1 or 2 afternoons where I can go skiing. So, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Have a good one. All right.